Welcome, everyone. Have you ever wondered how big companies get hit with those massive data breaches you read about in the news? A lot of the time, it's because there was one single threat, just one vulnerability that nobody saw coming. In this session, we're going to learn how to think like an attacker so we can stop these disasters before they even happen. This is practical threat modeling. It's an absolutely critical skill, not just for your exams, but for your entire career in cybersecurity. So let's start with the big question, right? How do you actually find these security flaws before the bad guys do? The answer is a process called threat modeling. You can think of it like a crystal ball for your security. It lets you look into the future, see a potential attack, and it gives you the power to stop it in its tracks. It's all about being proactive, not reactive.
إحنا بالنسبة لنا الخطوة مش بنستنى المشكلة تحصل.
All right, so here's our game plan. Think of it as a mission to secure a system. First, we're going to get the lay of the land, the big picture. Then we'll move to step 1, drawing the system. After that, step 2 is all about finding potential threats. And once we know the threats, we get to the most important part, step 3, mitigating those security risks. Finally, we'll wrap it all up with how to report our findings and the key takeaways you'll absolutely need for the exam. Okay, so what is threat modeling really? At its core, you can think of it like playing a game of chess. You're not just reacting to what your opponent just did. No, you're trying to anticipate their next move and the one after that. You're thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead to protect your king. That's exactly what we do in security, but we use a structured, formal approach. Now, you don't need to know the specifics of this tool for the exam, but it's great for context. Look at this. Imagine you're an architect designing a building. You wouldn't just start putting up walls, would you? Of course not. You'd have a blueprint. A tool like this is basically our security blueprint. It gives us a canvas, a modeling area, and all the components we need to visualize every single door, window, and potential entry point for an attacker. Let's get into our first practical step, drawing the system. This is our blueprinting phase. And the logic is simple. You can't protect what you don't understand. So, the first thing we do is create something called a data flow diagram, or a DFD. Think of a DFD as a treasure map. It shows you exactly where the treasure is, your data, and all the different paths an attacker could possibly take to get to it. Our job is to find those paths and fortify them. And here is our treasure map for this example. Let's break it down together. Our use case is called displaying marks, يعني إظهار الدرجات. We have our main characters, the student and the teacher. They want to access the treasure chest, which is the database. But to get there, they have to go through a gatekeeper, our firewall. And then they interact with the main system itself, the app server. Okay, so let's get specific about these components, because you need to know what they represent. First, we have external entities. دول هم الأشخاص أو الأنظمة الخارجية اللي بتتفاعل مع السيستم بتاعنا، زي اليوزر، التيتشر والستودنت. Then you have processes. دي الحاجات اللي بتعمل processing للداتا اللي بتستغل. هنا هم الفايروال والapp server. After that, we have the data store. دي المكان اللي الداتا بتخزن فيه، المخزن. في حالتنا هنا هي database. And finally, the arrows you see are the data flows. دي المسارات اللي الداتا بتمشي فيها زي ال HTTP rec اللي داخل والresponse اللي خارج. Excellent. So now we have our map. We understand the system. We see how data moves. It's time to start looking for the weak points, the traps, the vulnerabilities. And to do that, we use a very powerful framework that is absolutely essential for your exam. It's called STRIDE. This table right here is your guide to thinking like a hacker. STRIDE is an acronym, and each letter stands for a different category of threat. Let's go through them. S is for spoofing, which attacks authenticity. دعمنا إن حد ينتلصف حد تاني. زي لو حد صار موبايل صاحبك ويبعتلك منه. T is for tampering, which attacks integrity. دا إن حد يلعب في الداتا ويخيرها. زي إن طالب يدخل يخير داكتو في database. R is repudiation, which attacks non-repudiation. دا معناه إن user يعمل حاجة ويبعدين ينكر إنه عملها. I is information disclosure, a violation of confidentiality. زي إن طالب يشوف درجات طالب تاني. D is denial of service, which attacks availability. دا بيخلي السيستم غير متاح للمستخدمين. And finally, E is elevation of privilege, which attacks authorization. زي إن طالب ياخد صلاحيات teacher. So now we take our STRIDE framework and we apply it directly to our map, our DFD. This matrix you see here is basically our battle plan. It shows us exactly where the enemy is most likely to attack. On the left, you see our components, the firewall, the app server, etc. And across the top, you see the STRIDE threats. Every single checkmark you see is a potential vulnerability that we need to investigate. Let's zoom in on one of these checkmarks to see how this works. See right there? The firewall row intersects with the denial of service column. Why is that a threat? Well, imagine you have a single door into a building and 1,000 people all try to rush through that one door at the exact same time. What happens? No one gets in. That's a denial of service attack. Our firewall is that door. If it gets overwhelmed with traffic, nobody can get through, not even the real students and teachers. Okay, so we've identified the threats. We know where the weak points are. Now it's time to build our defenses. This is where we go from finding problems to creating solutions. And listen carefully, this section on mitigation is probably the most critical part for your exam. For every checkmark on our battle plan, we need a countermeasure. Let's start with the first one on our list, spoofing. The art of deception, of pretending to be someone you're not. So how do we stop the imposters?
The solution has two parts. First, appropriate authentication. ديل التحقق من هوية المستخدم. We must use things like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, any method that proves you are who you say you are. Second, we have to protect secret data. ديل المعلومات السرية زي API keys, passwords, credentials. لازم نتأكد إنها متأمنة ومحفوظة في مكان آمن عشان ما حدش يسرقها ويستخدمها في spoofing attack.
All right, next up is tampering. This is the silent threat to our data's integrity. How do we make absolutely sure that the data we have, like a student's grades, cannot be secretly changed by anyone who isn't supposed to?
We have a whole set of tools for this. First, appropriate authorization. then نتأكد إن التيتشر بس هو اللي عنده الصلاحية إنه يغير الدرجات. Second, we use cryptography. Hashes are like a unique digital fingerprint for data. لو حرف واحد اتغير, الfingerprint كلها بتتغير. MACs, or message authentication codes, are like a fingerprint that also needs a secret key. فمش أي حد يقدر يعمل verify للدata. And digital signatures are like the ultimate proof. They cryptographically prove who the data came from and that it has not been changed. Finally, tamper-resistant protocols make sure the communication channel itself is secure against modification.
Now for repudiation. This is what we call the "it wasn't me" defense. It's when a user does something and then denies it. So how do we create undeniable proof that a specific person performed a specific action? The key here is to create a solid evidence trail. First, digital signatures. These cryptographically tie a person to an action, making it impossible to deny. Next are timestamps. These prove exactly when an action happened. And finally, audit trails. Think of these as a security camera system for your data. They record everything, who did what, and when they did it. This complete log makes it very hard for anyone to deny their actions. Okay, this one is huge. Information disclosure. This is when private information gets leaked. This is the root cause of so many data breaches. So how do we keep private data private? We need multiple layers of defense here. Authorization ensures that users can only see the data they're supposed to see, so a student can't see another student's grades. Privacy-enhanced protocols are communication methods designed to protect privacy. Then there's encryption, Delta Sphere. It's like writing your data in a secret code. We use it to protect data when it's moving across the network and when it's stored in the database. Protect secrets, just like with spoofing, is crucial. And even better is to follow the principle of don't store secrets. If you don't absolutely need to store sensitive data, just don't. You can't leak what you don't have. In our final STR category, denial of service, the attack that tries to make our system unavailable to its legitimate users. How do we keep our application running and available, even when it's under attack? Here, it's all about managing access and resources. Appropriate authentication and authorization help by making sure only legitimate users can access resource-intensive parts of the system. Filtering is like having a guard who blocks known bad traffic before it even reaches the application. Throttling is a technique where you limit the number of requests a user can make in a certain period of time. This prevents one user from overwhelming the system. And finally, quality of service, or QoS, is about prioritizing traffic. You ensure that critical operations always have the resources they need, even when the system is under heavy load. All right, we've drawn our map, we've found the potential threats, and we've designed our defenses. Now it's time to document everything and really understand the long-term value of this whole process. And this is the final product, a threat modeling report. This is the formal document that proves we've done our due diligence. It lists every single threat we identified, its risk level, and, most importantly, the plan to fix it, the mitigation. This document is what the security team gives to the development team to guide them in building a more secure product. So why is this so important? Why do we do all this? Because it fundamentally changes how we build software. First, it integrates security into the SDLC, the software development lifecycle. Security becomes part of the process from the start, not an afterthought. Second, it reduces development costs because finding and fixing a security flaw in the design phase is 1,000 times cheaper than fixing it after the product has been released. And finally, it creates reusable diagrams. That DFD we made can be used again and again for future analysis. And this final question really brings it all home. Which part of the SDLC does threat modeling strengthen the most? The answer, as we've seen, is the design phase. By thinking about security at the very beginning, when we're still at the drawing board, we build stronger, safer, and better systems. So the next time you're involved in a project, always ask yourself, have I thought like an attacker? Because in security, the best defense is always a good offense.